Welcome to our webinar, Developing a Risk Management Plan for Your Firm. My name is Andy Mendelson. I'm the Chief Risk Management Officer of Berkeley Design Professional Liability Insurance Company for architects and engineers, and I'm speaking to you from Chicago. I want to thank AIA Contract Documents for sponsoring this webinar. Design firms face risk every day. You can't avoid it. At times, the practice of architecture can feel like a minefield. Our goal at Berkeley DP and the purpose of this workshop is to help guide you through that minefield without getting blown up by risk. At its core, risk management for design professionals is practice management, and both are best done proactively. A risk management plan is an essential element of loss prevention and a key ingredient of financial success for a design firm. When risk management is integrated into a firm's culture and embraced by its leadership, it has a significantly positive impact on business performance and longevity. An effective risk management plan contemplates the entire project cycle, from client selection to project inception and through project closeout. Bottom line, a well-run, well-managed design firm is more profitable and has less exposure to risk. Before I became Chief Risk Management Officer at Berkeley DP, I had a 36-plus year career as a licensed architect, mostly in the large firm A&E space. Migrated my career from the design side to the business side as project manager and then market leader, contracting officer, and CFO of a large multidisciplinary A&E firm in Chicago called OWP&P. And after we merged into Canon Design, I became the Director of Practice Management for Canon from 2009 to 2013 until I joined Berkeley. Along the way, I put a lot of focus on risk management as part of my business education and contribution to our firm and to the broader community. I served 15 years on AIA Documents Committee through last year. I was a primary author of the B101 2007 as well as the updates for 2017. I served on the Large Firm Roundtable Legal Committee for about 10 years and currently am active with the engineering group ACEC on their risk management committee. We provide risk management education from the practitioner's perspective. You can see some of the projects I've done on the right side there, mostly in the public realm, institutional work, education, healthcare, sports facilities, other public buildings. Our company, Berkeley Design Professional, is an operating unit of the W.R. Berkeley Corporation, which is a large publicly traded Fortune 500 firm. Our independent unit, though, focuses solely on the design industry. And my colleagues in underwriting and claim services all have significant 20-plus years experience each in the business of servicing architects and engineers. I have several colleagues that work with me in risk management education as well. We try to make this as real world as we can, trying to anticipate and focus on current and emerging issues. We are an AIA CES provider, and we will actually be providing the learning units for you. AIA will be forwarding your sign-in registration information with your AIA number, and we'll get those registered for you. I'll also have some contact information at the end of the program if you need to have a certificate of completion issued. Typical legal notice, we're not attorneys, and so this is not legal advice. Similarly, the practice management recommendations I'm going to make are going to be from my experience and what I feel is the right thing to do. Anything such as this should be carefully reviewed and adapted for your firm and the particular project requirements and issues that you have and the way you want to run your firm. I think you've seen the course description and the learning objectives. So we're going to organize today's workshop based on those learning objectives. We're going to start out with some general sections about the importance of risk management and some general principles of risk management for a design firm. Then I'm going to explain the concept of a risk management team, and then we'll spend most of the program on 7 components of a risk management plan. At the end of the session today, AIA will be forwarding you a PDF copy of the slides as well as a recording of this presentation. So why do we do this? Why do we provide risk management education? Well, we're trying to have you avoid claims. Claims are an expensive thing to deal with. You have the direct expenses of your deductible, and if for some reason there's something catastrophic and there's an expense that goes beyond your policy or per claim limits, that's an actual direct claim. So as an example, if you have a $10,000 deductible on your professional liability insurance policy and you're operating at a 10% profit margin in general, that kind of expense will cause you to need $100,000 in new project fees to recoup that loss. If you're a larger firm with, say, a $100,000 deductible and you go through that type of expense, that's going to mean the firm's going to need to land a $1 million fee project and run that at a 10% profit in order to recoup that expense. So it's very costly. And some of the costs that are really not calculated very clearly are the indirect expenses, particularly lost time. There was a survey a few years ago saying the average time it takes to be involved with defense of a claim is about 80 hours. Typically more highly skilled people, your project principals, project architects, and managers that are going to be involved. So, you know, pretty good hourly rates there at $150. So there goes another $12,000 of billable income, and multiply that by 10, $120,000 of fees. So it's quite costly. You also have the distraction element. You know, anytime you spend defending a claim means a lost opportunity, time you could be spending on your projects or developing new business. You're going to be finding yourself challenged probably with your client relationship, because about 90% of claims are filed by your client, and that anything that gets into the insurance company's dollars becomes part of a loss ratio and has a negative impact on your future insurance premiums. So all of that is the total cost of risk. And that's why we feel you need a risk management plan to avoid these types of claims. We feel that risk management is an integral effort with practice management and project management to facilitate firm success. By practice management, I mean the general standards, policy, and protocols that guide your firm's project delivery. These are probably supported by tools, templates, checklists, and processes that facilitate diligence and quality in project delivery. Project management is the skills of your project leaders, whether that person is a project architect or a project manager or project principal or project director. It's that person who is in charge of running the team, your team, and those that you are responsible for that might be engineering consultants to you. So risk management is not really a set of isolated activities. It's not just about, you know, getting a good contract. It's really about the way you behave and produce your projects throughout their life cycle. Let me give you a couple general principles of risk management. There are really two types of risk that you face. The first is legal and insurability risk, and that's what is bound within the terms and conditions of your contract. Utilizing an AIA contract form, you've got the general terms and conditions the documents committee provides. And then you're going to have project-specific provisions that are going to specify the type of the project, the characteristics of the project, your scope, your fee, what's a basic service, what's a supplemental or additional service, things like that. And even if you have a non-standard agreement, such as an owner-drafted agreement or a state contract or federal government contract, there should always be project-specific provisions that make the contract customized for your particular project. And with diligence in reviewing this, and we recommend that all firms be diligent in this regard, the type of risk you're going to face based on those terms and conditions should be rare. The risk you face day in and day out, however, is financial, and that really has to do with implementing your project, fulfilling the scope of services that you have promised in your contract for the fees that you have agreed to, and returning a reasonable profit margin to your firm. And so this is what you face day in and day out. It's a great challenge of project management, and it's where practice management techniques can help as well. We look at the risk management model in four regards, and we'll touch on some of these components in detail. The first is avoiding risk. based on a client selection and project selection process that is diligent for every commission you take on before you go through that process. That's what we call the go, no-go process. And you're in business to do projects, but sometimes you're better off walking away when it's just not the right fit. But you're taking on projects, of course, and so you're going to transfer risk. First, you're going to transfer them in contract. You're going to maintain your responsibilities as a design professional, but you're going to make sure that the owner's responsibilities are clear and that the risk that a contractor has is clearly defined in the contract and transferred to that party, such as means and methods of construction, safety precautions, that sort of a thing. Your professional liability insurance is an important risk transfer mechanism for you. You pay a deductible, and we as the insurance carrier pay the rest. So you may have a $10,000 deductible and a $2 million per claim limit, and so you can see the amount of risk that the insurance company is taking on. And you need that to protect your assets and the integrity of your firm. But you're retaining a lot of risk. You know, as a design professional, as a licensed architect in the state that you practice in, your Practice Act is going to define that, you know, you've got responsibility for the breadth of the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. In addition to those specific aspects of the project, the expectations of your client, and to meet or exceed those expectations. So, and you're also assuming the financial responsibility, as I mentioned earlier, that financial risk to do these projects in a profitable manner. So in order to control that risk, you need to have some management techniques. Again, practice management, project management, risk management. You also need to monitor the progress on your projects through the financial management software that you have, and also the client relationship that you have. Make sure you're staying in regular contact with your client to make sure they are happy with the way the project is proceeding. Unfortunately, many claims occur because of unmet expectations and poor communication, and that's where the monitoring and excellent communication will help you. So, you know, one final slide then on risk management fundamentals is really the understanding about what an architect does for an owner and what a construction project is. It's a risky project. Each project has a unique set of risk-reward factors, and most owners know that, and they know that the client, the owner, and the users of the project are the primary beneficiaries of these investments, particularly when you look at the life cycle of the building. That might be, you know, 50 plus years long. Think about all that benefit you're getting. You're getting a fee, but it's a small amount compared to the overall investment they're making in the project. And as a result, clients need to understand that you're providing your services under a professional standard of care. And that professional standard of care is not perfection. And while you are a component of the owner's risk management team because you have been selected based on your skills and expertise in that project type, it is the owner's responsibility to pay for the project and to accept that risk on the project. That's why owners need to have contingencies from the beginning of the project in their project budgets and maintain those all the way through the end of the project. So let's talk about ways that you can be a better risk manager at your firm. And the first thing I'd like you to think about is a risk management team. A core group of people that are focused on these issues, no matter what types of projects they work on or what type of discipline they have. So if you're a larger firm with multiple disciplines and multiple markets, this is a way of getting a lead person from each of those to share knowledge and experience across the firm. We have found that no matter what type of project you're working on, and you know, even if you're in an engineering discipline or another related design profession, the issues of risk management are very, very common across the board. So we want people to talk about what's happening on their projects and not get so siloed. You know, this risk management team can then encourage awareness and action, promote and advocate for best practices, and embed this whole important issue of risk management practice and project management into your culture. Can help the principals develop policy. It can also be a group that is in charge of conducting post-project evaluations. So we'd like to see broad representation, management leading this, but it's got to be scaled for your firm size and organization. I'm going to give you some examples of that, starting with the sole practitioner. Many of your firms probably started out this way and maybe have evolved from them. But when you're the sole practitioner, you're there and you're responsible for everything. You know, you probably had an outside attorney help you set up your business. Hopefully you are procuring your insurance from a specialist insurance agency, which is the way our insurance is procured. These are insurance brokers who really understand your business and can help you through a good number of business issues, including corporate formation and contract reviews and the like. So when you're starting out as a sole practitioner, this is what your risk management team might look like. But as you grow, and you start assigning project architects and project managers to lead projects, you're going to start seeing things happen on a number of different paths. And it's a natural tendency to focus really on what you're working on, and maybe not be so concerned about what the team next to you is working on. But what we're suggesting is that you get a reasonable group of project leaders together that can work with the firm principals and discuss these issues, perhaps on a quarterly basis or something, so that these common issues can be shared across the firm, and then those project leaders can share that information with the staff. As you get to be a larger firm and get more of a corporate structure, this is more like the firm that I spent most of my career with, and I was kind of in the middle there as a senior executive risk manager, first as contracting officer and then as CFO. Set up a network of risk management coordinators in each of our major markets. And what the risk management coordinator is not a separate overhead position, but rather an add-on role to a senior project leader, senior project manager that has a good amount of experience in the building type, in contracts, and business practices, and is a good communicator, so can help the firm's executive team communicate these key issues down to the project managers and their teams, and also be effective in receiving input from the bottom up, from the teams through these folks, so that the issues can be discussed and policies and procedures can be improved. Your agent, insurance broker, can still have a role here and contribute to your regular meetings, as well as provide services that specialist brokers provide. And when you get really large, you might even have in-house general counsel to help support your risk management team. So the point is to have a group that is really focused on these issues on an ongoing basis and help to develop your best practices for your firm. So let's talk about the components of a risk management plan. And these are going to roll out right here. I'm going to start with strategic planning, then get into that go, no-go process, and then talk a couple sections on contracts, communication documentation, practice management, and project delivery. And then we'll conclude with staff training and development. So why did I introduce strategic planning into this program? It really has to do with your firm being in a position where you can establish value in the marketplace, where you can be differentiated from a positive perspective and offer higher value services to a client. It's about creating your identity, defining your purpose and mission, and then moving forward from there. You know, most firms are a mix between high value services where you can demand higher fees, be in a position to negotiate stronger contracts, and you want to get as much of that as you can. The reality is that many of us work in the commodity world where it's difficult for clients to understand when you're in a competitive situation that you're any better than the next architectural firm that's also interviewing for the firm. You all have excellent portfolio, so it's a question of how do you sell yourself in that competitive situation. But when you have a strong purpose and mission, identity, and you've established yourself as a high value provider, it's going to help you from a risk management perspective. It's a process that engages senior leadership It can be facilitated with an executive consultant. You review it, your past, where you want to go in the future. You want to develop initiatives and tactics and the strategy that you want to communicate and promote to your staff. These generally, for firms, there's milestones about every 3 to 5 years where you do a major update on it. And you're typically going to revisit this on an annual basis when you do your annual business planning and make projections for the upcoming fiscal year. It is a living document. It doesn't want to sit on a shelf. It wants to be usable and where the staff can engage with it. So one of the things that comes out of a strategic plan is what types of clients do you want to work for? What types of projects do you want to do? That sort of thing. Where's your place in the market? So once you get to that point, you're going to have many opportunities in front of you. And of course, we're in a situation right now where the design and construction industry is quite robust, pretty much across the entire United States. And we've been in a robust economy for quite some time. So what we think is important as risk managers is when there's a lot of projects out there, it's a little bit easier to do this and turn down projects that aren't right for you. It's important to be diligent with this when the economy is perhaps not so strong. So when we think about client and project selection factors, it really has to do with the quality of the people and the quality of the projects they are intending to build. So what is the reputation of your client? Do they have experience in that particular building type? Are they well funded? Do they have the ability to pay for your fees as they're figuring out the rest of the project financing so that you don't have to be in a situation where you're putting your fees at risk? Where are they from a legal perspective? Are they litigious? Do they tend to sue contractors? Do they tend to sue architects? Those are obviously red flags if they are that way. And then what about the schedule? Do they have a realistic understanding of what it takes to plan, design, and construct a building and everything that goes along with it, or is it unrealistic? The project selection factors are similar. Is there an adequate budget? Does the schedule make sense? Is it properly financed? Very importantly, what about the quality of the project? Does that owner, does that developer or institution or government agency want to build a quality building, one that is consistent with the type of projects you have done in the past, where you want to strive to through your firm's strategy, and those that you would be very proud to have in your portfolio? And there's a wide variety of this, so it's important that you put the diligence in to really understand this about your clients and your projects and be able to focus on it. Another important factor is the team. First, your internal firm and design team that you have internally, whether you're architecture only or do planning and interiors, whether you have in-house engineering. All of that. Do you have the people available? Do you have the leadership available? It's a tendency of many firms to promise the same project manager on a series of interviews. What happens if you're so fortunate to win multiple interviews and you've got the same team, proposed for multiple projects? Pretty difficult thing to do. You need to have a depth of staff, a depth of leadership in order to meet your standard of care and implement that project properly. What about the external design team? How many engineers do you need to hire? Do you need to associate perhaps with another architect? What kind of impact does that have on your fees, your project management, and the like? And what about the overall project team? What does your owner's organization look like? Are you going to get an owner's designated representative that actually is empowered to make decisions? Is there an owner's representative or project management firm that the client has hired that may be an intermediary between you and your ultimate client? This all has impact on your efficiency of delivering projects and your ability to have a successful outcome. The financial analysis component is really about understanding the scope of the project, the intent of the project, client expectations, and the fees that you are proposing. Will that fee support the effort you want to have to deliver a quality project? and to deliver that all-important profit target that you need to have to stay in business. Large firms, the very large firms, have their project managers do very detailed financial analyses, project plans, even before they propose their fees. Not just reliance on similar projects that occurred in the past, but really looking at that history plus the specifics of this particular project, and really analyzing and having a much greater degree of confidence that the fees will support the work effort and the profit targets. So this does add to overhead time for those firms, but it is a great discipline to have. Ultimately, it's about making an informed business decision. All these aspects of the project, do they support your strategic goals for quality, for portfolio, for market expansion, that sort of thing? Ultimately, you're going to make that informed business decision. So what we've done is we've posted a pretty handy go, no-go project evaluation checklist on our public website, berkeleydp.com. It's in the risk management tab. There's a few other templates and articles there as well. And so what we do is we summarize these issues. This is a combination of qualitative and quantitative information with a plus minus and a recommended range of scores that really would cause you pause. If there's too many negatives, just be very careful about proceeding with that pursuit. Your marketing dollars are important. You only have so much time, so much budget, and so much effort. So to narrow in on this is going to help you to control your marketing costs as well as the risk management factors we've been talking about. Our third component, critically important contract review and negotiation process. We recommend that you have a consistent review process that starts with your internal team. The two people in the middle, the project principal and the project manager, are critical to this. At a minimum, those two parties should be involved from your standpoint and involved in the contract negotiation. If you are large enough to have a risk manager, to have a risk management team with a risk management representative, that person, those people can help as well. External resources are available through your broker and through your insurance carrier if they offer risk management services, as our brokers do and as Berkeley DP does. So we provide support to you in this process. We have a very handy contract review guide. We have a checklist of top 10 items, that sort of thing. Many firms are comfortable having their outside counsel weigh in on every contract they have, even if they do get support from their insurance agent and carrier. So if that works for you, we suggest you continue that process. The important thing is it be consistent, it be diligent, and just because you're in a hurry and you're anxious to get a job started, don't let these important aspects of contract review and negotiation slip. You may want to establish an interim agreement to begin services if you're under time pressure to start those services and the bigger owner-architect agreement is not yet negotiated. You want to establish contract review processes that may, for yourself, establish a list of deal makers and deal breakers. An example of a deal breaker would be for an architect the responsibility for liquidated damages. This is a penalty that a contractor can bear if they're late in delivering a project, but is not insurable and is not fair to an architect. A deal maker example would be a limitation of liability equal to your fee. And again, if you never ask for it, you'll never get it. Your fee or reasonable multiplier of your fee, we think it's particularly critical for limited scope projects where you don't want to expose your entire deductible and your entire policy to a very limited service. Ultimately, you're going to provide an analysis, you're going to perform an analysis of the risk-reward profile of the project and the contract and make informed business decisions. So again, some of the tools we offer, we have a letter of authorization form. We have this top 10 checklist. And again, these are available as sample documents on our website there. This is what that letter of authorization looks like. It is a brief summary of what you're going to do for an interim period of time, say 30 days, 60 days. It will expire after that point, at which time it is assumed that the larger owner-architect agreement will be executed. If for some reason that is not executed and you are not able to reach agreement, the second page of this indicates some conditions of ownership of the documents and payment of the fees and all of that. So when somebody asks you to do some work, you got to make sure you're going to get paid for it, that there's a clear understanding of what you're doing in that limited period of time and what your deliverables are going to be and what the conditions are for you providing those services. So very, very important. Some people attach this as a signature to a proposal with some terms and conditions. That can work as well if your attorney has reviewed that kind of standard document and giving you the go-ahead. This is our contract review checklist. Our contract review guide addresses about 35 terms and conditions. These are the 10 that we consider to be the most important, and it's a little bit more understandable. And there's our contract review guide, which is 26 pages long, covering 35 key terms and conditions, plus a 12-page supplement at the back end for condominium projects. Condominium projects are the riskiest projects that an architect or an engineer can take on. So there's a special contract considerations for those types of projects, as well as a recommendation that you be particularly diligent in that client selection process for those types of projects because of issues that often occur post-construction. Another important part of the contracting review and negotiation process is really getting on the same page with your client, making sure that you are aligned in terms of what you understand to be the goals and expectations of the project, and to make sure you have agreement with the client on that. They may have been unclear. You may have gone through a marketing process. It may have taken several months. Perhaps the owner's perceptions have changed. The other thing that may have changed is the scope of services you propose for the fees that are ultimately negotiated. I think we've all been in a situation where we've proposed a fee, and then that client wants that fee to be a little bit less. When that situation happens, we like to see that there's some reduction in the scope of the services, not enabling falling below the standard of care, but just so that they know that, hey, we gave you this fee because we are going to, provide all these services and all these deliverables. You want something less? We're going to give you something less. So try to get on the same page with that, really good understanding what basic services are, supplemental additional services are, and the like. Also very important, particularly for the client that is not experienced in designing and building buildings, what this whole notion is of the design professional standard of care, and the understanding that the client really needs to establish in their project budget sufficient contingencies, not only for construction, and most clients understand that there are going to be change orders in construction. Again, it's their responsibility to pay, not you as the design professional, but also during the design phases. What about additional services or expanded services that a client may want you to do after you've signed the original agreement, which limits the basic services? So they should have a budget for that. We used to recommend to our clients have a 10% of the design services budget assigned for potential additional services that the client would ask for, and that you as the architect and your engineering consultants would provide. So contingencies throughout the project. Also very important are the client responsibilities. The AIA agreements do a very good job in defining what client responsibilities are. However, many of us work under agreements that are not AIA agreements. They might be custom drafted by an owner's attorney, or they might be provided by a university system or a hospital system, and they tend to be a little bit light about what the client's going to do. So you want to make sure that they assign a decision maker, they establish budgets, they provide necessary project information such as site surveys, geotechnical and environmental reports, and other things that are listed in the AIA agreements. It's also important that you be very diligent in your sub-consultant agreements. You want to have your engineering consultants aligned with your requirements per your prime agreement. You are typically going to pass through the services, responsibilities, and duties of an engineering consultant of yourself as an architect for that discipline of engineering that you're contracting for. So it's very important that the terms and conditions be aligned. Also very important is that the dispute resolution process be the same. We've unfortunately in our claims department seen situations where there might be a customized architect consultant agreement that doesn't align with the AI owner architect agreement, and you may be in a different dispute resolution with your consultant and makes it impractical to involve them in the dispute venue that you have with your client, the owner. So be very careful about that. You also want to make sure that your consultants are properly insured. Many firms these days require at least their primary engineering consultants, your structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, civil engineers, to have the same levels of insurance that you have as an architect. If you have a $2 million policy and your mechanical engineer has a $1 million policy, and there's a claim that's revolving around mechanical services, and it gets above $1 million in terms of the settlement amount, from a practical standpoint, there's not going to be any insurance left for that, and you as the prime consultant are going to be responsible for that gap. So you want to try to avoid that. And even when you're in a situation where you've got a whole host of consultants, maybe based on some diversity requirements of a public agency, be very careful about the types of services the consultants are providing, the complexity of them, and the project and the potential risk for them. So work with your insurance broker and your carrier to help establish good standards for your consultants so that you're not left holding the bag. Okay, our fourth aspect of the 7-part risk management plan is contract education for the design team. Seems like a pretty simple item, but too often, architects will take their contract and put it in a file and never look at it again. They won't even necessarily share it with the members of their project team. And we think that it's not necessary for your design team to maybe see the entirety of the contract, although we'd be happy for that. But at a very minimum, we think there are certain key aspects of the business aspects of the project that they should be aware of. The scope of services, the schedule, the deliverables due at every phase milestone, the budget for the project, the change management protocol, what is required for that if you sense that there's an additional service. And there may be some key clauses where you've taken on some additional risk that you really didn't want to, but you decided to accept it in that risk reward, informed business decision, and you want the team members to be informed of that to help them with their sensitivity to the issue. So particularly, when you're a medium, larger size firm and your project team is larger, you as the project manager cannot necessarily be at every client meeting, at every meeting with a consultant or a contractor, and you want your team members to be aware of these key business issues so that they can help you manage the project, make you aware of the situations that are arising in a particular meeting or as a design is developing when you're not there in person to see it. The other thing that's very important is that your architectural design team understand the roles of your consultants. As well as what your role is as the prime consultant. So it's too often that young architects go out to the field, they see an issue, maybe a conflict, maybe a coordination issue, and they try to solve the problem themselves without realizing that, hey, I can pick up the phone, call my mechanical engineer and deal with that duct routing issue, pick up the phone, talk to my structural engineer about an issue with aligning, columns and beams in a particular detail situation. Make sure that they understand, hey, this is a team sport. You've got people in your firm that can help you, but moreover, you've got to hold your consultants accountable and get them involved when there's a situation during construction that they should be involved in. We talked earlier about the responsibilities of the client, that your team members should be aware of what the client is supposed to provide in terms of information and decisions they're supposed to make and the timeliness of it. And again, there might be other parties. We talked about this in the team formation stage, such as a third-party project manager or owner's rep, or if you are doing a construction management project or a design build project, you as the architect are going to be dependent on and can rely on that construction manager's or builder's cost estimating abilities and the ability to move the project along based on their responsibility for estimating. That's an example. So we also create a nice handy template for contract business terms summary that addresses those key points and enables the project manager to share this information with the project team at the kickoff meeting when you're starting up your project. It's also a good idea to review these key points at phase startup meetings to keep this stuff forward and fresh in everyone's mind. Okay, the fifth element of the risk management plan is the very important communication and documentation category. Communication issues are a key factor in claims. As I may have mentioned earlier, sometimes, unmet expectations, failure to communicate, what the goals are, what the intent of the project is, what your responsibilities are to the client, and what's happening on a particular project. Sometimes those in itself can generate a claim without there even being a technical error and omission allegation. However, most claims are based on something that's actually gone wrong from a technical standpoint. But even then, the communication is an exacerbating factor. It's very important that you have thorough and properly filed documentation throughout the life of the project. If a claim is filed against your firm, you're going to notify your broker. They're going to notify us as your carrier. We're going to assign one of our claims examiners to your account. And the first thing they're going to ask for is the contract. The second thing they're going to ask for is your project documentation file. And it's important that you be diligent in this throughout the life of the project. Some of this has to do with really documenting the client's decision-making process, understanding it. As you plan your communication plan strategy for the project, is that client rep that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis able to make decisions, or are there going to be committees that you will need to present to? Are certain decisions going to have to roll up to a board of trustees? It can be a layered situation, particularly when you're working in the government field or, institutions such as, colleges and universities, healthcare, large complex corporations where, sometimes there's a process that you need to be aware of it. You need to design your communication plan with your client accordingly. You want to align their needs with your own team's requirements. So you're going to have kind of a parallel path as far as the communication plan you're going to have as a design team with your consultants. If you're doing a construction management project, the construction manager is going to be involved pre-construction. You've got to have touch points with them. Thorough communication is going to help the project a lot. So you want to establish responsibility for documentation and its frequency. This is a project management responsibility, but the project manager can assign this to another member of the project team. What's important is that every meeting that you have with a client be documented as far as key issues, decisions made, follow-up steps, and the like. And that it be issued to the participants. So a communication plan then addresses a schedule of meetings, presentations, and approvals. Meetings are necessary. We need to communicate what the development of the design is to the client. We need to get their approval. But too many meetings can be inefficient, and too many presentations can be inefficient. Our advice is the larger and more complex the project is, the more definitive you get about what you're including and what you're not including in terms of your basic services, in terms of meetings and presentations, and document what that approval process is for the client so that you understand it and you can budget your time and share that, that strategy with your client. So, we didn't go to architecture school to learn how to become court stenographers, and we don't have to be that. There are strategies, and we address these in other programs of ours, as to be more limited, but capture the important stuff. But the value of being the author of the project record is very high. It really helps you recall your memory, because sometimes claims don't come until a couple of years after your design activity occurred, and that way the story is told in your voice, and when it's filed consistently, even if some members of your project team have left the firm, that documentation is going to be there for reference and referral. As I mentioned, change management protocol is really important. And again, your team can help you with this. Very, very important that your firm have a change management policy. And this is first to identify issues where project changes are occurring and where they might be a legitimate additional service. You can also have risk situations that need to be discussed with others. But let's focus on the additional services part. You have an obligation to notify the appropriate individuals. First of all, within your firm, if you're a staff member on a project, you need to notify your project manager. Hey, I was in this meeting. Let's pick a school project. We had designed the science labs and schematic design. We all agreed on it. The client agreed on to it. Now they've got a new chairman of that department, and that person, we're in the middle of design development. They want to change the design of that lab. I said this could cost us a lot of time, a lot of money for our consultants and the like. The project manager needs to know this, and they need to know this before you do the redesign work, because they need to attain approval or authorization for these additional services before they are performed. And this is a feature in virtually every owner-architect agreement you will see. It's in the AIA agreements. It's certainly going to be in contract and owner-drafted agreements and other standard agreements that institutions and governments use. The reason is that they have that design budget to maintain as well as the schedule. And they need to know that somebody on their organization has made a request for you and your engineers to do more work, which might jeopardize the schedule and cost them more money, cause them to eat into that design contingency that they had established. So again, you know, and then you want to document these changes in the project file. Again, for history, for auditing purposes, that needs to be there. So identify, notify, authorize, and document. Very, very important. This issue of being able to capture additional services is one of the most important aspects of trying to maintain profit on a project and enhance profit on a project. If you start giving away additional services, your profit margins will diminish, and it will create all kinds of other problems for your financial management on a project. So again, you know, we're not court stenographers. We have to figure out a system where we can efficiently document the discussion at a meeting. I think you want to capture the options considered, recommendations made, and decisions reached, as well as the follow-up that's going to be required by various parties. So, you know, as an example, you know, you may be proposing, your engineer might be proposing 3 different gradations of temperature control system. System A, which is the best and most energy efficient, you know, achieve your lead ratings. You know, option B, which is going to be probably okay, but, you know, diminished comfort for the occupants, and then option C, which is basically meets code minimum and is going to challenge you for any type of human comfort going forward. So when you have these decisions, you know, if you've got it documented that if your client makes the unfortunate decision of going with option B or option C, and then a year later they start complaining that people in their office are uncomfortable at the change of seasons or whatever, you can point, you can bring out your meeting minutes and say, well, we recommended option A, but you chose option C, and you save some money that way, but these are the thermal comfort issues that we explained might be there. You know, when you have a document like that in your file, that's going to make a dispute go away rather quick. So again, you know, try to be concise with this, and make sure that, you know, you're being clear and presenting your recommendations, the benefits and risks of various options for your client. We recommend that you use templates, that you establish meeting minute templates, agenda templates that can, again, help you be efficient in this process. You need to publish those minutes in a timely manner with an aging statement, that says this, this assumes accurate unless you notify us within 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, whatever it might be. Then it becomes part of the project record. So we have a few agenda templates as well on our website. Here's a couple of them here. So feel free to look those over. You can look at that information. Maybe they can supplement what you've already got as a firm. But when your project manager, project architect, or team member goes out to a meeting and has a pre-printed format, it's just going to make the whole process a lot more efficient for you and a lot more consistent. Very, very important as client expectations for project performance have increased, particularly within the last 10 to 15 years, as sustainability has become an important component of many projects. What kind of expectations are they going to have for the performance from an energy perspective, from operations maintenance? If you have a project that is going to be commissioned, if it's LEED Gold or above or otherwise, establishing owner's project requirements for technical issues and energy performance, mechanical, electrical. If you are proposing innovation in a design, whether it be the materials, systems, products that are being used, obviously you're in a creative profession. We want to encourage this, but you have to make the client aware of the risks. If you're proposing something that's innovative and is not tried and true from your own perspective in the industry, you want to have your client provide informed consent of the systems you're using, of the materials you're selecting, and that they understand the risks and rewards. You don't want to be out there proposing things or actually implementing innovative material and systems into your project without your client knowing it, okay? So this is, again, a very important, documentation communication issue for you. AI Trust even published a waiver for this, but we think it's sufficiently documented when it's in a well done meeting minute. So consistent file format is important. This is a Excel spreadsheet that we developed in order to have a model that can expand and contract depending on the size and complexity of the project. You want to be consistent in the way you file and the way you retain your records. Archive and store them. Have the discipline to consolidate paper files at the end of the construction documents phase, again, at the end of the project itself, at the end of final completion. Align your electronic filing systems with paper files that you have. Most firms are moving towards 100% electronic, and make sure that it's all consistent. The related subject, very important, subject of a whole other workshop we have is about email protocol. Email lives forever. It is legitimate, legal business correspondence, but there's a tendency to use it conversationally, and it has to be used more judiciously and in a way that anyone who writes an email is very thoughtful about what they write, and realizing that when you push the delete button, it isn't really deleted. It's there forever in your servers, and there's a whole industry of e-discovery that's rampant in litigation right now. So be very careful about it. Follow logical, professional protocols, and don't be sloppy. It's also important that you maintain your diligence to communication and documentation when you're in the construction phase, when it's the contractor's responsibility to do the meeting minutes of the job, reviewing the track documents, submittals, RFIs, change orders, pay requests, agency approvals. Similar to what your aging statement is, you need to object to these in writing when you see something that is misrepresented. Contractors can have a tendency of misrepresenting the architect's performance. Response time on an RFI, response time on a submittal, things that are said or misinterpreted in a job site meeting. Be very, very diligent with this, even if you are not the primary author. Also be very diligent if a substitution is proposed to you. Make sure it follows the specification requirements that you have and the QA/QC procedures that you have established. Unfortunately, there can be pressure put on you in construction, and substitutions that are done quickly without the necessary diligence often result in claims. Most firms don't allow them at all in the construction phase, and many don't even allow them in the bidding phase. So again, this is part of that protocol and practice standards that you're going to establish as a firm. Project issues, similar to the things that came up at the meeting minutes. Early identification is important. Developing proactive responses, solutions, engaging other senior level people at your firm. You have expertise that you can draw upon. And a good professional liability insurance like ours will have pre-claim circumstances reported to us. Our claims people can help you work through that without that being subject to your deductible. Pre-claim services are a very important professional liability insurance policy feature. Okay, we're down to about 5 minutes here and 2 sections here. Try to rush through these. Practice management and project delivery. Again, critically important to form the bounds and the standards that you want to have in project delivery. You start with planning. When you've received your fee, you want to plan your scope, schedule deliverables, the staffing you're going to assign, what those financial goals are, overhead rates, that sort of thing, everything to enable you to properly budget your project. If you have a project delivery process, it can be a framework for project planning, execution, and quality management. We recommend that you establish something like this to establish your standards for key and critical activities in the design phases, the production, deliverables that you like to see at each of those design phase milestones, the characteristics of the presentations, the types of documents you provide there, your standards for timing and completeness of regulatory submissions and agency approvals. So it basically establishes a baseline of services for you. The more tools and templates you have, standards, guidelines, procedures, protocols, checklists, the better it's going to be for you. It's going to make your work more efficient, and it's going to embed quality management as a continuous effort as you're developing the project, rather than simply a milestone effort, midway through or later in construction documents. We recommend that it be an effort that starts in schematic design and continues through every phase of the project. We have a guideline tool on this as well. It's called 50 Key Activities, and it aligns some of our tools and templates with the activities in each phase. This is something that's exclusive to our policyholders. We've got some checklists that AI Trust has enabled us to refer to, and those are very, very helpful. Quick word about BIM, again, subject of a separate workshop, but you really need to manage the expectations of your client and other team members over the use of this powerful tool. AIA has some very robust documents, the E203-2013, and the guides that go with it, and the forms, protocol forms that go with it as well. You must have digital exchange agreements that define the expected and allowable use of the models, the right to rely on it, and you should also have a process to establish and work with your consultants on a BIM execution plan. BIM requires a higher degree of planning and coordination than did CAD. So here's a white paper that I co-authored with Jim Atkins that's published on the AI Trust site as well as our website. And we've also provided a very simple BIM transfer form to general contractor, which is letting them utilize the BIM for reference information only. We particularly studied in the 2017 documents whether to elevate BIM to the level of a contract document. We did not because the industry is not ready for it yet. Will the industry be ready in 5 years, 10 years? Maybe, but for now it's supplemental information. You can't put any representations or warranties on it, and they have to use it in conjunction with the contract documents, which are to be relied upon. It also addresses your ownership of the copyright of your design product, and that the recipient of it is going to hold you harmless. So it's rather simple, similar in concept to what you had in CAD, but better defined so that these expectations are managed. When you make the transition to BIM, in order to be effective in practice management project delivery, you need to upgrade your IT and design technologies. You want your staff to be able to perform with proper equipment, servers, LAN, WAN, other aspects of communicating these high power and very deep and big data files that go across. Also have an enhanced attention to cybersecurity. That's really even more important as firms are hosting BIM documents. We recommend that you hold your people accountable, that you have a process to analyze, establish what responsibilities are, and hold people accountable for it. Your internal design team, your consultants, contractors, and other parties in project delivery. Financial performance data, most firms are sharing pretty broadly the project financial goals, and we found that helped a lot get buy-in to the importance of financial management. And again, if you have the ability to take the time and create an efficient process for doing post-project evaluation, we recommend it because of the value of lessons learned. So I'm going to run just a touch over here. Anyway, the last component here of the risk management plan is staff training and development. We really encourage firms to invest in long-term retention of their staff. Training and development is important to develop the skills across the board. Design, technical, project management, and your corporate support groups. Everybody should have the opportunity to be supported, and we feel that you make the investment, these folks are going to be better employees, they're going to be more efficient, and they're going to have more loyalty to your firm. We're in an interesting generational situation right now. I'm a member of the baby boom generation, but the millennials, I think starting next year, are taking over as the largest group, the largest cohort in the work environment across the United States. So I've got a situation where our firms have, more senior people such as myself that understand business practices, how to put a building together, that sort of thing, but we might not be as knowledgeable as the younger folks as far as design technology and how to utilize those remarkable tools in a more efficient manner. So with two-way cross-mentoring, we can grow the firm, positive development for all. So as you develop future leaders of your firm, you're going to need to provide some training in leadership, communication, team management skills, whether they're project leaders or firm leaders. You want to offer them the skills development to enable opportunities for growth. And we want you in that process to instill quality and risk management as key elements of your firm's culture. That's, of course, what we've been focusing a lot on in today's session. So just to summarize real quickly, we've talked about why a risk management plan is important. We've gone over the elements of the risk management model for design professionals, promoted the concept of a risk management team, and spent most of our session on the 7 components of developing a risk management plan. So this concludes the AIA Continuing Education Systems course. As I mentioned, AIA will be, if you've put on to your registration your AIA number, we will automatically report those learning units to you. If you have any questions or if you need a certificate of completion, please email my colleagues at risk-support@berkeleydp.com, and that phone number is shown right there. So thank you very much for your attention to this program. And we didn't really have time for questions, but there haven't been any submitted through the chat line anyway. So thank you again for, here's my contact information if you need it. And again, you will be receiving a copy of this program in PDF form as well as a recording of the program. So best of success in the remaining months of this year, and as you continue to flourish in this great profession of architecture that we have. Take care.